I'm Scott,
I'm Kyle.
and this is Crushing Trails and Drinking Ales. This month, we're going to talk about us both towing the line at Angeles Crest 100 and our vastly different experiences at the race.
See how we're recovering and also training for Barkley Fall Classic at the same time. All right, let's get into it.
All right, Kyle, why don't you tell us what you're sipping on tonight?
Yeah, tonight I have a hazy little thing IPA, classic from Sierra Nevada, that comes in at 6.7%.
While you're sipping on that, why don't we take a look and see how August went for you?
Yeah, so, it was a good month of running for me in August. I had a good time. What are you drinking on tonight?
Yeah, I'm actually sipping on a couple different things tonight. I've got a Fest beer from Red Horn, which is one of my favorite breweries here in the Austin area. It's a 5.4%. And then probably when I finish this one up, I'm going to go to Save the World Brewing Oktoberfests, which is 5.9%. Just doing the Oktoberfest beers because I love this time of year. So.
Well, it's the season for them. Well, while you're enjoying those, let's take a look at your August running.
Let's do it. August went okay for me. I wouldn't say it went great, but we'll get into that a little bit. Probably the best spot to start is we both towed the line at AC100 at the beginning of August. We had a vastly different experience. I think in both of our heads, we were going to kind of cross the line, not necessarily physically holding hands, but, kind of crossing the line together. Unfortunately, that didn't happen very early on. I don't know, mile 14 or whatever, somewhere around, I think at Baden Powell, that was mile 14-ish, right?
Yeah, that was around there, just coming out of Vincent Gap, and that was when the climb up Baden Powell started.
Yeah, so that was about just under 4-mile climb, pretty steep. To that point, I was feeling pretty good, and then my stomach just started feeling a little bit off at that point. Thought everything was going to be okay, and we were kind of cruising downhill. It was gorgeous out there. When we got on that road section, it started getting hot. That's when I started throwing up. Tried ginger and ginger ale and all kinds of stuff, and unfortunately we hit a couple aid stations in a row that were out of ice, and so it was kind of warm. At one point I thought I had my stomach back on track. We were cruising together for a little while. Unfortunately, took a bad turn, kind of separated. You waited for me at, what was that aid station?
Mount Hilliard?
Yeah, I think it was Mount Hilliard. You ended up, you weren't too far ahead of me, but you definitely had pushed ahead at that point, and we met back up at the aid station, and my stomach wasn't feeling great. I knew I had enough calories on me to get to the next aid station, so I just drank a couple glasses of ginger ale, and I was like, let's go. And I made it, I don't know what, 30, 40 yards out of the aid station and start throwing up again. It was like, I'm done, just go. And I watched you kind of push on and turned around and kind of tucked my tail and started making a walk of shame back to the aid station because I thought that was where I was going to drop. And then said, hey, screw it. Let's see what happens. And I turned around and started pushing uphill. There was a big climb out of that aid station. I thought I could push on with the calories I had, and quickly realized that wasn't going to happen. And I kind of did a death march into Chile. Ended up missing the cutoff by about 6 minutes. Pretty disappointing. Had a pretty rough time dealing with the aftermath and all that. You obviously had a much different day than I did, and why don't you fill us in on that?
Yeah, I know we were together for, like you said, about 40 some miles. Early on in the day, I was just kind of eating the Lenny and Larry's cookie, little chunks, and hydrating. For whatever reason, I didn't have any stomach issues after, having been plagued with it so many times in the past. And then when we ended up parting ways there or kind of almost at the halfway point, a little close to that. And that was when the sun went down. So that started my, solo section basically.
Yeah, I gotta interrupt. You gotta highlight that because on your first 100, you had a long stretch completely solo. It's pretty impressive. So what was that, 30 something miles solo from like what, 40, 45 to almost 80, right?
Yeah, I think it was like from 45 to 79. Yeah, I was out there. I was clinging on to some people in the night, whether they knew it or not, if they were moving at a good pace. There were some points in the night, especially at the Red Box aid station, where I sat for a while, where I was contemplating, like, if I was moving slow enough, I wouldn't be able to make a cutoff, and then I would just be done. But when that kind of set into the mind, I tried to push it out and just keep moving. And once I got to Mount Wilson, saw Mitch and Tony was there and came into pace, kept her moving from there and got it done. The last 1.8 miles was a walk in on the blacktop, but first time going for 100. 32 hours, 28 minutes, and 21 seconds later, I managed to get it done. So kind of how it started the month. And then, the next couple weeks were a lot of recovery for me.
And you had you put together a kind of a quick recap, right? So we can throw that up on screen if anybody wants to check that out.
Yeah, it was the last part of my first 100 running my first 100-mile series. So yeah, we can go ahead and put that up on the screen. Yeah, so then my month, like I said, a lot of recovery from there. How did it go for you?
I didn't have the same amount of miles on my legs, so there wasn't as much recovery for me. So I took 4 or 5 days off after the race. I think a lot of that was more mental than physical. Was struggling quite a bit post race, but I was able to jump back into training pretty quickly. Knowing that we had Barkley Fall Classic coming up, which honestly, it's probably good there was something else on the calendar, because if there wasn't, I probably would have just been super lazy and not done a whole lot and sunk into stupid running depression. So yeah, I jumped back into training pretty quickly. I did do Capt'n Karls 30K a couple weeks ago, which is a night race that started at 7:45 p.m. about an hour outside of Austin. I ended up having overall a pretty good day. I had some headlamp issues and had to stumble around in the dark for about 4 miles, and luckily another runner had the same headlamp I did and had an extra battery pack, and he gave it to me, and I ended up finishing. And then about 5 minutes after I finished, he came through and I was able to get it back to him. So I had a lot of delays just because of that, but ended up finishing like third Masters runner, which makes me feel super old that I'm in the Masters category. But overall, didn't have any stomach issues, and which is what took me out at AC100. So it was nice to kind of be able to shove a bunch of calories in my system in the heat and kind of get through that. So that went pretty well. And then other than that, it's just been kind of like ramping up a little bit and getting the final training in for Barkley Fall Classic, which is coming up. Yeah, Kyle, I mean, what have you been doing for Barkley?
So just been trying to get in the last minute miles. Had a 15-mile run. I ran from my apartment to my buddies over in Hollywood. And then I also had a couple of runs out on the trail with a lot of vert focus. So that was my big thing kind of here at the end of August, and just getting ready for BFC. We have that little series that we created, so we'll put that up on screen to check out. How about yourself? What are your final prep looking like?
The big thing for me is right after AC100 coming back to work, I had some pretty big changes with where I go and what I do for work. So good for me. I'm at home a lot more to be around the family, and so that's a good piece. But from a training perspective, I don't go to El Paso anymore, so no more mountain running for me, which is bad for training. So I've been doing some running and hiking on the treadmill at a 10+% incline. Been doing the running in the neighborhood and trying to get on trails when I can. But that's pretty much how I've been wrapping up August and kind of getting ready for Barkley Fall Classic.
Awesome, man. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. We're almost there. And one other thing that you were working on here at the end of August was the wheelbarrow beer mile video. So you finished that. Put that one up on screen so people can check it out.
So we tried to put a little spin on the beer mile and decided to run a beer mile through your parents' yard in Wisconsin with a couple wheelbarrows and some ice and some beers, and we tried to have fun with it. So
absolutely, and I think we've been having a lot of fun so far. Looking forward to September ahead of us, and until the next update, guys, cheers.
Yeah, cheers.